Okay, I'll call to order the meeting of the Corte Madera Town Council for Tuesday, August 21st. Roll call.
Councilmember Bailey. Councilmember Beckman.
Here.
Councilmember Kuhnhart.
Here.
Vice Mayor Andrews.
Here.
Mayor Ravazio.
Here. Yeah, if you'd all join me in the salute to the flag, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we will open with public comment. This is the chance for members of the public to speak about items that are not on the agenda, and we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. Are there any public comment? Yes. You could please give your name and address too for the record. That'd be great.
Good evening. Lucinda Smith, 46 Althaway. I'm in the wrong meeting, but I did want to bring up the point that I was here to, I thought, hear something about, and that's with regard to the sewer laterals and the new regulations that are addressing them. And there was, I thought, going to be somebody from the water board or the sanitary district to answer some questions. So I understand that's not part of this meeting. When would it possibly be scheduled? Thank you.
Okay, and we are not allowed to talk about comments because they're not on the agenda, but I'm sure that staff can provide you and update you this the next time we actually discuss the sewer lateral ordinance. It is coming up.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, then there are no presentations. We will move on to the consent calendar. The purpose of the consent calendar is group items together which are routine or have been discussed previously and do not require further discussion. They'll be approved by a single motion. Any member of the town council, staff, or public may request removal of an item, and I believe the town manager would like to speak to us about that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. At the request of the mayor and other council members, I'd like to pull item 4.1.4. It's the response to the Marin County Civil Grand Jury report titled Yellow Bus for Traffic Congestion Relief.
Okay. Are there anybody else who would like to pull an item from the consent calendar?
4.1.2.
4.1.2, designation of U.S. bicycle route 95. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Then let's go to 4.1.2 first. Did you have questions, Jim, specifically? Or did you
Yes, I have a few questions. Where is there a map showing the proposed route from Sonoma County border down to the Golden Gate Bridge? Okay. Because I just see the portion from Larkspur over to Mill Valley.
Councilmember Andrews, that's all I see as well, is the part that we have jurisdiction over, which is within the Corte Madera town limits.
Right. But once we lock in our piece, Larkspur will be locked in, Mill Valley will be locked in, and where Larkspur ends, all the folks on Sir Francis Drake, assuming that's where the route is, and I don't know where it is, they will be locked in. Okay?
I don't believe that any action we take locks in any other jurisdictions.
They can't route, let me rephrase it. We can't move our route, they can't put their route in a location that does not intersect our town borders.
Just a little bit of background. So U.S. Route 395 is a bicycle tourism route that has been determined by other organizations. The action before you tonight is simply to give official town blessing that we agree and to support the bicycle tourism route through town. So, there's no locking in. Every jurisdiction can choose to endorse or not endorse the route. I do not believe that will have any impact on the route designation or the information that goes out to bicycle tourists.
Has this project been discussed at the monthly meeting of mayors, council members, and supervisors, so they can see the whole picture and we can get comfortable with it.
Not that I'm aware of.
It's been discussed at the manager level, I can tell you, especially between Mill Valley and Larkspur, and their intent is to approve that
Okay.
route. So,
All right.
Any additional questions, Jim?
No, that's it. Okay.
So, then let's move on to item 4.1.4, which is the town manager who wanted to talk about the additional report that we have.
thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. There is a revised version of the staff report, and I'd like to walk you through it a little bit. So if you have that at the dais, if you don't have a copy, please let me know. I also have copies of the revised version in the back for the community. Some brief background, and I take responsibility to the council. There's no one that believes in partnership more than your town manager, and I know our responses and our actions reflect the council and our community. You may have read in the response, my first draft, there's some frustration, and I want to share that with you. And I tried to put it into words, and I asked Peter Brown, our Public Works Director, and Rebecca Vaughn, my assistant and the town clerk, to assist me with that. So we're going to take a second crack at this. I've talked to each council member individually, and I tried to put some of those comments into this revised version. But something that has been a frustration of your town manager regarding recent grand jury reports. I think the role of the grand jury is very important, and I respect it. It's one of those, when I was a police chief for a 5-year period, I was part of the orientation of the grand jury on the importance of their role and how we can help them in government. I take it very seriously. And something that's really important for the grand jury is to identify issues and to challenge government to do better. And in a succinct way. And a part of that is the analysis of the report. The report is important. And when I have a grand jury report as a town manager and staff, I expect to see analysis and then to respond to the analysis because it's helpful. In this report, as other reports in the last 12 months, I feel like the answer is to throw money at a problem without analysis. It's to form committees and groups to identify stakeholders and people responsible for solving problems that it really isn't the responsibility of some of those groups. If you take that into consideration, right now we support a yellow bus program that really has limited impact on our town, but it supports our partners in Belvedere and Larkspur. I'm sorry, in Belvedere and Tiburon, and we've committed $100,000 over the last 4 years to them. And so we absolutely support the yellow bus program. So this isn't about support of the yellow bus. But when you have a report like this, and the analysis, I think, falls a little bit short, and I want to walk you through it. I try to put it in words, and I really thank Peter and Rebecca for helping with this. It's important to note some background, which we try to do, but it's also it's important to identify the stakeholders and how we move forward. And so we have to be really careful, and we can't just throw money at this. If we did agree to implement everything that's in front of us, you're looking at a minimum of $250,000 impact to our budget. And so before you do that, before we as staff take it to council and ask our community to support something like that, you have to have analysis. And so this is my best effort to take some of the good constructive criticism of the council and to try to put it into words. And so the background on page 2, really the first paragraph is the same. What we added is what comes next. It's the second paragraph. And this is really, over the last 4 years, my summary. The town has had a thoughtful and supportive approach to the Yellow Bus program and the concept, but further analysis regarding traffic impacts, funding formulas, and identification of lead roles, responsibilities, and oversight are needed. Staff notes a lack of careful analysis in this report and also had no opportunity to respond to the grand jury's set criteria of responses with an opportunity to have a meaningful dialogue. And I'm going to stop there. So when I say meaningful dialogue, something I would like to see at the MCCMC level as a county is to engage the grand jury in the future. And really, you can't, I don't want to say pigeonhole, but you can't give us 4 specific criteria of responses. Sometimes if you want to have thoughtful dialogue about something, you have to have options. And when you read these, you're really limited, and it makes it hard to answer. And it's an example of, and I think Councilmember Beckman rightfully in our discussion said, hey, look, your words, your summary is like supportive. It's right. I agree with it. But then you say it's not going to be implemented. It seems it doesn't match your response below. And that's one of my frustrations of, yeah, it's a really specific question, and it's limited in thoughtful dialogue. And I'll give you an example. For example, a consultation with the grand jury regarding trip generation rates, traffic engineering, and reduction in peak hour trips to a significant level may have helped the report and findings be more pertinent and capable of reducing school hour congestion on Marin County roads. To be clear, the town fully supports the Yellow Bus program concept. It has done so by providing over $100,000 over the last 4 years to the Tiburon Peninsula in support of their program to reduce traffic at minimal benefit to the town of Corte Madera's traffic congestion. Below is staff's best effort to respond to the grand jury's limited scope and requested responses. And so a lot of the responses are the same, but we did make some changes. And so to response 2, all municipalities should work with the Marin Transit to secure ample locations for bus parking and a location for bus maintenance by the end of 2018. So when you read that, I think it's a poorly worded response. Because really of course we're going to work with the municipalities, but what they're saying is specific. Corte Madera is going to either find locations to store buses. When you read their grand jury report, I don't have the page number in front of me, I think it's 7. They basically are saying locate up to 5 acres of a property and change the zoning for buses, or to find city-owned property to find bus parking. And so in Corte Madera, we continue to do that. Our response reflects that. We changed it from it's not going to be implemented, and we try to be thoughtful, and we're going to continue to analyze and work at that. And so that is a change that we made. On response 4, Marin Transit should facilitate negotiations for financial arrangement across a full group of participants that would distribute any tax revenue lost by any municipality or county by providing parking in municipal facilities. Our response, again, it's not going to be implemented as there's no current time frame in initiation of these discussions, and really we left that response the same. You know what?
Do we want to add something in there about, we don't even have a funding mechanism for the basic service, every year sort of an ad hoc thing where, they come to us asking for money and we give them some money, but it's like,
We say next year we're going to fix it.
well, we say fix it and don't come back next year. And they put on their beggar bowls and come back and visit us the next year and we give them another 25,000. But it's like, do we need to get the state to authorize us to have a education bus assessment district?
Right.
Okay? And then we can go out to the parents and say, do you want us to provide buses for the students?
Right.
Right.
And this is how much it'll cost. But to do that, we need to have an idea of how many students will it be?
Right, the
How much will the bus-
analysis that Todd was just talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. And, Belvedere, Tiburon, they're talking about, can you hear me? They're talking about, signing another 4-year contract this year or next year?
Right, yes.
So that will give us a guesstimate of what the costs are. And then we can figure out the number of students, but,
Right. So to that, and I'm sorry, we had 2 versions, and so I'm going to give you a verbal. I'm going to read this to you, and then at the end, what I'm going to ask is, would the council be comfortable directing the manager to work with a council member and the mayor on really finalizing what I'm verbally stating? I think it'll be. I think you'll agree with hopefully the path we're going to take. But so, to response to. Really to that, it's the recommendation will not be implemented. The town is willing to have this conversation. However, past evaluation has shown that the town does not have sufficient existing space or facilities. That was originally our response. We're going to change it to we're going to continue to analyze that and work with our stakeholders. Response 4, again, it's not going to be implemented because really that's the responsibility of Marin Transit. It's not ours, and so we're not going to implement it because you're asking us to speak on behalf of Marin Transit, and it's not appropriate for us to do that. But if you go down below, of course, we're going to continue to work with all the stakeholders, and we're here as staff to support this because we do support the program overall. The school districts, with or without existing yellow school bus programs in municipalities within the urbanized area of the county should join and actively participate in the yellow school bus committee, providing guidance to Marin Transit and yellow school bus issues such as cost allocations, bell times, routes, and the initial meeting should be held on October of 2018. And so here's the next two I have a big problem with. And so R7, what they're asking, when they say committee, if you go to the page 10, I believe, of the report, one of the first things that the grand jury is asking is they're using the word committee. Well, words mean a lot here. And what they're saying is they're basically saying Marin Transit should be the chair of this committee, and then all the stakeholders should join in. They're asking us to form a JPA, and they're asking us to form it by October of 2018. And they're asking us to then to build a funding model based on whatever Marin Transit decides. So our feeling is we're not part of any JPA, we're not part of any yellow bus school program. So we're not warned, we shouldn't respond to that. We're not in it. And so it's not our problem to solve. It should start, and with our leadership, we'll help this. But really it starts with the school district and Marin Transit. Marin Transit has the bus information, the school district has the numbers. That analysis then helps us start to talk. We can form a committee and an ad hoc committee and work towards whatever we want to do. But we're not forming a JPA and picking a funding formula when you're skipping an important step. And a JPA, especially with all the things that are going on at the CalPERS level of pension liabilities and joint several language, we're not doing that right now. And so we'll step back and take a more thoughtful kind of approach. Hey, we're here to talk, we're here to problem solve with you, but really it starts with Marin Transit and the school districts to provide us information to analyze, and then we'll have a thoughtful dialogue and conversation. So that's kind of my thinking of how to respond to that. On response 8.
Before you leave it, do you want to go one by one, or do you want to?
Sure.
Just so it's a little bit more efficient. I don't know whether you took note of my email today, but I commented on the R7 one, and it seemed to me that particularly because R7 calls on school districts and municipalities to talk along with Marin Transit, it seemed to me that we, town council, can't say this will not be implemented, and that we should simply eliminate the first sentence of our response and start our response with coordination among, the conversation among, as you just pointed out, is entirely appropriate, but it still ends with, we don't have the available staffing and financial resources, so it doesn't change the import, it just eliminates this, I think, somewhat misleading straight arm.
So which of their silly categories do you think this goes into then? Would it be
I think
implemented
it should
further
be-
analysis?
The second comment that I made in my little email today is that it should go on the third
Further
category of further analysis, the third bullet point. So perhaps it's R2 and R7 that should be listed under recommendations requiring further analysis, because that's in effect what you just said.
Okay, and so originally when I didn't put that in there, and it's fine, I think it's further analysis. In 6 months, the grand jury will come back to the town of Corte Madera and say, what's your further analysis and what's your response to this? And I think we're going to be in the same situation of, again, it's not our analysis, we're here to support it, and it's how quickly can that happen. It might be it's not warranted for us to respond. We're not part of a JPA or a committee yet. It's not our analysis and our problem to solve.
But didn't we get word from Marin Transit and/or TAM in 2 meetings ago that they're going to be undertaking discussion of additional yellow school bus programs?
Yeah, so I'll tell you at the manager level, there's been a lot of discussion with this, and as a group, we've decided to really, originally we pushed for that funding, and it wasn't in there, and then it did get placed in there with really no process of how it's going to be distributed. So the managers at our level really said, okay, who has yellow bus programs? How can we support you in this current need? And then the bigger picture. with analysis, how can we all work together to support our communities and talk about that. So we're going to really challenge Diane Steinhauser and TAM to have a thoughtful approach.
And the school districts.
And absolutely.
Yeah.
But it really starts with them. It starts with Marin Transit and the school districts.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to put further analysis. I just want the council to be aware in 6 months, we know the backstory and we can work our way there and we got to have a nice, thoughtful response. And I think, like we said, we have a member on TAM and we can maybe coordinate something a little bit more thoughtful and
Yeah.
hopefully engage them.
I totally understand what you're saying about how their categories of responses are very black and white, and they're asking us to respond to things that are they're not recommendations of us, they're recommendations of other bodies, and they're asking us to respond to that, which doesn't make sense. But I wonder if there's a way that we can sort of use a further analysis response or a future implementation response to sort of force that dialogue and say, this needs further analysis, and then write in our response that we are lacking the analysis and the data that we need in order to be able to conduct that analysis.
Well, yeah. For R7, taking out the first sentence, recommendation will not be implemented makes sense. The second sentence, I'd modify it so it would read like, coordination among Marin school districts and transportation-related agencies, comma, assisted by municipalities, close comma. So the emphasis is put on those two groups, because it's really
Yeah.
their business.
I like that. And I think that's consistent with what I was thinking anyway.
Okay.
I think I'm sorry, we had two versions. I'm going to try to pull up a revised version because we may have covered it for you.
Well,
Just pull it up here if you're able to read the screen. No pressure, Peter. We can stall.
And while there's a pause, Mr. Mayor, can I ask if the prior item was pulled, does that mean that we need to now act on it? Because
We're going to come back to that. Let's finish this first.
Okay.
We're going to come back to that stuff, and then we're going to come back to the whole consent calendar.
I see.
But I'm waiting for us to get through this.
I see. I didn't know the process.
It's going to come back.
Good.
Don't worry.
Yeah, but my view is a little large even for my bad eyes.
Yes. Okay, now do review all, look at all markup, yeah.
okay.
A couple comments for councils. Yeah, we can zoom in a little more too.
You can make it larger, I think. Go full width.
120 usually works.
Or page width.
Or you can just move that one up.
Okay, that's what I want. Give me more.
Use the up arrow.
Do you want me to use that? Oh, that's 500.
No, let's just do one.
I thought 140.
120 usually works for,
There we go.
4,000%.
I can't.
Oh dear.
There we go.
140, Tom.
Beautiful.
Much better.
Okay, again, per Todd's comments, I think that the direction should be to work with the town manager to finalize the letter. But just to give you some initial thoughts as to how we were thinking about addressing this, I think both Councilmember Beckman and Councilmember Kuhnhart have pointed out that we're in a catch-22 whereby this grand jury report asks a lot of different agencies, and then it asks for specific responses from specific agencies on various topics. And so I tried to capture that by adding this sentence as relates to the town of Corte Madera's capacity to address the grand jury's recommendation. So obviously, we're at your discretion. I would recommend that we stick with this recommendation will not be implemented. You can put in brackets by the town of Corte Madera if it's more clear for you.
That's better.
Yeah. Because again, to Todd's point, having dealt with this for a lot of his career, this will come back, and per the regulations surrounding grand jury reports, if we say further analysis is required, that implies that we're going to do further analysis. So,
Okay, and then on R7, is there anything yet? Okay, R7 is where we were talking about eliminating, where we're talking about eliminating the first sentence, this recommendation will not be, and start it with coordination. So you're essentially saying, yeah, you want us to talk, okay, coordination is important, and I agree with Jim, if we start with school districts and put municipalities as a parenthetical clause after transportation related
Assisted by municipalities.
so again, open to amendment on R7.
One really clear thing on R7, those words are like, yeah, what's the big deal? In the context that they're using R7 and in the body of the report, so the previous response is we're going to form a JPA. They're saying that JPA becomes active, moving forward, and we're going to, as you go down to R8 now, we're going to establish the coordinated program and institute the funding model. We're done by fiscal year 1920. There's no analysis to be had there. That ain't happening until we do that analysis, right? And it's not our problem. It's not our information to give. It's the Marin Transit and the school districts. If you read below that, though, we're absolutely in the ballgame. My staff, my finance director, my planning, my public works director, we will help this process. We are helping. We're involved. But the question isn't really related to us at this point. You can't ask us to be in a JPA. That committee is a JPA.
Where do we say explicitly that, hey, guys, you're talking about a committee, but in governmental speak, you're talking about establishing a joint powers agency of various bodies and so on. And, maybe the grand jury will better understand the issue.
Yeah,
This all goes back to the lack of ability to have a dialogue with the grand jury
Right.
and explain the caveats to our responses, the problems with the report.
I think
When's
the
the
frustration.
response due?
Yeah, so we're not going to have another. I think lastly, I think our recommendation should hold, but I think after the recommendation will not be implemented, I think it'd be helpful if the mayor and maybe one other council member, so we don't have a Brown Act issue, we fine tune a sentence or two after that recommendation. So if we're going to say, or we can say it before, but we kind of define why we're saying that a little bit better maybe. So it's supportive, but we can clarify a little bit better. I think there's a way maybe to do it.
Do we want to move the coordination onward to the second paragraph? So we have the response where we basically
Sure.
say no, and then,
Or we could say the recommendation, further analysis is needed, and then point to the jurisdictions that needs to provide the further analysis. So they don't come back to us, they're coming back to, we're saying, so we can take off the we don't have to say it's not going to be implemented, we could just say further analysis is needed. And we can add that we believe it's incumbent upon Marin Transit and the school districts to provide that analysis. And then we keep we separate the paragraph, and then that is what we're going to do. We're going to work with them.
okay.
Maybe that's the way to do it.
work?
But we
I'm
can
with that.
wordsmith it.
I like that.
So I struggle with it. I apologize to the council for my short responses. I'll do
Well,
better next
okay.
time.
You have
It's
a
difficult.
couple of rookies who are looking at the plain meaning of the language, and it sounds to me like a verbal straight arm. We're not going to do this, as if we're not
is.
even interested. There's nothing
What?
about this.
It is, and that's okay. It's fine.
I hear you.
Read
Okay.
him the Larkspur
Sometimes you gotta give them a
response?
straight arm,
Okay.
and you know what? Not a big deal. I'm perfectly comfortable doing that, so.
Nope, no.
What'd Larkspur say?
It
Yeah.
was
They just said we're not doing it. That's it.
pretty abrupt. And to the bigger picture, that is a problem for us, because when you talk about the yellow bus program, it's important that our partners
Right.
are part of it. And so
Right.
there is a problem.
Absolutely,
sounds
but we
like-
shouldn't let the president that Larkspur sets influence
Not us. No,
far
absolutely not.
following the
And
right
it doesn't
course
by
of
our
action.
actions.
Right.
Right.
So I'm asking for direction. I think just some quick, staff will wordsmith this a little bit tonight. We'll send it to the mayor, and if there's one other council member that would like to assist, Councilmember Beckman,
You're the
just to
school-
get,
you're the school's liaison, should be you. Yep.
we'll ask for your approval in the next week or so on that, and then we'll send it our response.
Okay, we want to make sure that it's clear that it's the town versus the school district who's saying we're not going to be implementing this, because we're not part of a JPA.
That's correct.
Right.
Right. And,
Does that work?
and you're going to copy all of us because I'm sure that this is going to come up at TAM. Right?
I will
One way or
work
another.
through the two, but I will, yes, I will make sure that the
Yeah.
whole council has our response, absolutely.
I'm
Yes.
happy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you
Okay.
for your feedback, it was helpful.
So that means we're going to pull item
Sorry.
4.1.4 completely, right, Rebecca, from the consent calendar? We're not going to do that, right? We're not going to do anything with 4.1.4 tonight. Or we approve it, we're going to approve it pending approval by the mayor and
Yes.
one council member, Eli
Yes.
Beckman, who's the liaison to the school
Okay.
districts.
Right.
That's correct.
Can I have a motion to that effect?
Yes.
Second.
Oh, I already second. Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Or did I primary and David
Okay,
seconded?
is everyone clear on the motion?
Yes.
Councilmember Bailey? Councilmember Beckman?
Yes.
Councilmember Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews?
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio?
Yes. Okay, let's come back to 4.1.2, which had been pulled. Jim, are we okay with putting that back onto the consent calendar?
Yeah, I'm going to vote against it, though.
Okay.
Just for the record, on that item, I attended the BPAC meeting which discussed this, and they were unanimous in the desirability of the route that's been selected, and there was no presumption or expectation that Corte Madera would have to widen roads or take other measures or spend other money in order to accomplish the signage. That's what I heard, and so that's why I'm going to vote in favor of it.
Okay.
We need to take the vote separately.
So we need to take a vote separately on that. Okay, so then I will entertain a motion to approve items 4.1.1, 4.1.3, 4.1.5, and
6
4.1.6. And
and
7.
7.
Sorry, yeah.
So
7.
moved.
And seconded.
Councilmember Bailey? Councilmember Beckman?
Yes.
Councilmember Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews?
No. I'm sorry. Yes.
Mayor Ravazio?
Yes. Okay, so now I'm going to come back to 4.1.2. Oh, wait, did I take public comment? Oh, no, we already did that at the beginning, sorry. Okay, yes. This is way too complicated, wow. I will, any further comments or questions from the council?
Maybe
on
we should take public
4.1.2?
comment just in case.
Okay, just to make sure, okay, I've been advised by town staff. Is there any comment on 4.1.2? Okay. I'll just add, I was at the BPAC meeting as well. I'm on the BPAC, and the BPAC and the public there pretty much unanimously approved this route selection as well. Is there a motion to approve 4.1.2?
I would move the approval of the designation of the U.S. Bicycle Route 95 through Corte Madera,
Second.
and also the adoption of that resolution number 38-2018.
Councilmember Bailey? Councilmember Beckman?
Yes.
Councilmember Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews?
No.
Mayor Ravazio?
Yes. Okay. Wow. So that got us to 4.2 sanitary district items. Any
Consent.
questions, or do I have a motion on 4.2.1 and 4.2.2?
Public comment?
Oh, public comment. I thought we took that at the beginning.
It's a different section.
Different consent calendar. Okay, any
You're now
public
present.
comment on the consent calendar for this? Okay, hearing none, then I will entertain a motion.
I'd like to move motion 4.2.2.
Second?
Board Member Bailey. Board Member Beckman.
Yes.
Board Member Kuhnhart.
Yes.
Vice President Andrews.
Yes.
President Ravazio.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Whew. So much for the consent calendar.
We made it.
Okay, our first public hearing, 5.1, actually our only public hearing. Items related to moratorium on cannabis-related activities, consideration and possible action to approve Resolution 48/2018, accepting a report describing measures taken to alleviate conditions that led to the ordinance which imposed a temporary prohibition on non-medical cannabis-related businesses in Corte Madera. So I'm going to turn this over to staff.
Good evening, Mayor Ravazio and members of the council. As introduced, the purpose of this item is to accept a resolution, which is a report describing the measures the town has taken to alleviate conditions that led to the council's prohibition on medical and non-medical cannabis-related businesses in Corte Madera. And secondly, the purpose is to consider adopting an extension of the urgency ordinance to extend it to September of 2019. So first, I'll start out with a little bit of background. It's on page 2 of your staff report. Back in September of 2017, the council adopted an urgency ordinance putting a 45-day prohibition on medical and non-medical cannabis-related businesses from locating or operating in the town of Corte Madera. This was required because if the town didn't do that in January of 2018, the town would be required to follow the state's rules. And so the town more or less put a 45-day emergency hold. And one thing specifically the town did not prohibit was state licensed mobile delivery service businesses located outside of Corte Madera for delivery of medicinal or non-medicinal cannabis products to retail customers located within the town. So that's the one thing the town did not prohibit. Then approximately a month later, October of 2017, the council extended the moratorium from 45 days all the way to September 18th of 2018. So basically about a month from now, that extension will expire. In order to extend the prohibition once again, staff needs to provide a written report to the council 10 days prior to that expiration, which we've done and is attached to the staff report as attachment 1. And that describes the measures the town has taken to, since adopting the ordinance, to alleviate the conditions that led to adoption of the ordinance. I'll explain that a little bit more. In the discussion down below, lower part of page 2, I basically describe what's in the report showing what the staff has done since September 2017 in terms of educating ourselves and deepening our understanding of cannabis-related issues throughout the area, gathering additional information on types of cannabis-related businesses, talking with other jurisdictions, and learning, understanding regional and regulatory responses, and other policy directions. So that's a number of things we've done, and just in the last several months, we have also hired a consultant to help us in project management in developing a cannabis ordinance for the town. And we have also created a public survey, which will be on the website soon. And also next month, we will be holding 2 public workshops, one on a weekday and one on a weekend, to educate the public and get a sense of the public's feedback and their opinion about cannabis and cannabis-related businesses. And then after that public workshop and that feedback and evaluating the survey, that will be followed with meetings before the Planning Commission. And again, these will all be publicly noticed and open to all. And so the Planning Commission will talk about the ordinance and give us their feedback. They will at some point provide a recommendation to the council, and then this ordinance will come before you for review and potential adoption. We're hoping to have this all wrapped up by the end of this year or early 2019. I did want to just also mention an email that you all did receive from the town clerk, from a citizen expressing his opinion regarding medical cannabis and the potential, city tax revenue that can come from that. And also in page 3 of my staff report, I outlined the 3 options that you have this evening. And then finally, I'd just like to reiterate the recommendation, which is on page 1, that staff recommends that the council approve the attached resolution and adopt the attached ordinance, extending the temporary moratorium on cannabis-related businesses for another year, which will be September 18th, 2019, in compliance with the California Government Code section in the report. And staff will work to develop a permanent ordinance addressing cannabis businesses and uses.
Just for clarification, the public comment was on recreational cannabis dispensaries, not the medicinal ones that are a separate regulation.
Okay.
But there's no difference, or,
Well,
Yeah,
Well, it is, but.
okay.
So,
So that concludes my report, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
thank you, Phil.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. So we're going to go to the council first for any questions for staff on this.
I have one very specific question. You mentioned, at least in the way you described it, Phil, that there will be a survey and then there will be a workshop. And it would
2 workshops,
seem to
yeah.
me that the survey should follow the workshop in case the workshop is actually informative. And I'm presuming that it will be informative, because, a survey right now just reads how people feel in their own uninformed basis. And I have to say, as one individual, I am surprised at how uninformed I am on this topic as I get into it more and more. So I would suggest that the survey follow the public conversation, and I do look forward to having that public conversation.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion, and our intention is to actually have the survey before, during, and after the
Oh.
workshop. And so it will be up on the website, and one can participate in the survey at any time. We hope one will only participate in the survey once, but it will be available. Our hope is to introduce it at the first workshop and keep it active till we haven't really determined exactly when we would close the survey.
Can you,
But we will be asking people to identify that they're Corte Madera residents. It's difficult to restrict that survey to just Corte Madera residents, being that it's going to be on the website. And lastly, I forgot your other point.
with the survey, can you take snapshots so we can get a sense before the meeting and after the meeting?
Or does the survey ask if they attended a workshop? Might be a good question.
We can certainly add that. That's a
Yeah.
great idea. Currently doesn't, but I can add that.
That'd be helpful.
Or
I think.
open and close it so that you can sort of see if opinion is shifted or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
One question I have is, are there any jurisdictions in the county that are planning on allowing marijuana in the next 12 months?
Allowing marijuana, you need to be a little bit more specific.
Let me put it this way.
There's a lot of different ways.
Okay, right now, we have, Corte Madera has prohibited marijuana businesses,
Correct.
okay? Except if somebody drives in, we can't really do anything about it, okay?
Right, or we've chosen not to.
Okay. Even if we wanted to, we couldn't do anything from a practical standpoint. Okay. But I believe some jurisdictions are thinking of allowing cannabis dispensaries to open. Do you have any idea which ones they are and whether they would be functioning by the time we next have to make a decision? So we can get a sense of what goes on or doesn't go on.
Can I try to,
I-
can I try
I
to help
don't-
you on this
sure.
one? City of Santa Fe has apparently, to some extent, opened the doors, and there are some 15 or 16 applications for different kinds of businesses. The town of Fairfax has had a medical dispensary for years, and they are kind of leaders in that industry in some ways. And they are, they've had a number of conversations this year, starting in very beginning of the year, and having two very deep and very long conversations until after midnight at the beginning of this month. And one question that I would ask is if you've had a chance to look at, I would suggest in particular, the agenda package for the Fairfax meeting on August 1st, which has some advice from Best and Krieger, the law firm that does a lot of municipal work, and defines terms and so forth. So it's kind of generally helpful. But they're really wrestling with it, and they're not concluded, and they're about to, or I believe, that the town council has said, okay, we're open to it, but if it's regulated, and they've tossed it to their planning commission to undertake some more conversations this fall. And so it's going to take months before they're resolved, but that's what I understand from my initial research.
And just to add to that, Marin County has also authorized several, there's a specific number, but of delivery business licenses to operate within the county jurisdiction. I don't think they've all been chosen at this point. Maybe one has been authorized, but they are specifically allowing delivery businesses. And then obviously there are, as you mentioned in City of Santa Fe, a host of other sort of types of businesses that aren't necessarily retail establishments or
Right.
delivery, but they're sort of testing laboratories. And I think there's about 17 or 18 different business licenses that the state is issuing for the industry. And it may be helpful. I don't know. I don't believe we did put it in this particular packet, but we had a fairly detailed staff report prior to adopting the moratorium and discussion at the council regarding sort of the same level of overview of the ordinance and so on and so forth that I think generated a good conversation amongst the council members at that time, and we can definitely provide that and put, I think, on our website as well for everybody to look at and provide some public education that way.
This moratorium, is it the last one we can do, or next year could we kick the can for another year?
This is the last time we can kick the can, and so this one expires September 2019.
All right.
And just to follow up, I knew there's another comment you mentioned, Councilmember Kuhnhart. In terms of educating, we will have in the beginning of the survey, we will have a brief, Cannabis 101 and a number of links. So if someone wants to educate oneself, you can do that before you take the survey.
Any other questions from council members? Okay, then we will open it up for public comment. Any members of the public wish to comment on this? Yes.
Tax collector Karen.
Couple things. So
Please
my name
provide
is
your name.
Karen Gerbosi. I
Thanks,
live
Karen.
at 111 Parkview Circle. So regardless of what you said, I think that there are people in our community that have a certain amount of awareness about what is happening with this. I was around before the medical marijuana initiative was passed, and I've been to council meetings all along. I know that we've had bad behavior with people opening dispensaries in our town and violating our ordinances and whatnot. So I've made a point of being relatively informed. So the state of California is continuing to wrestle with this. So I urge the council, the short version is I urge the council to approve this extending the ordinance, extending the ban, or however we want to say it. The other thing that I just wanted to say is that regardless of when we do something, now, later, whatever, I don't think that that the town of Corte Madera needs to feel that it should be compelled to have dispensaries within our town. There's a raft of retail establishments that aren't existed in Corte Madera. I drive to San Rafael, I drive to Mill Valley for certain retail things that I want. And so we should never feel compelled that we need to have dispensaries within our town just because there are people in our town that use medical marijuana. They can go to someplace else, they can get delivery, they can do whatever it is that they do. But I don't think we should ever feel compelled that we need to have dispensaries within our city limits. And then the other thing that I just want to be sure that we take into consideration, and I'm sure that we do, it just wasn't mentioned, is that we have our police department weigh in on their opinions about how this thing is managed, administered, et cetera, because I certainly see things all the time in the news about bad behavior, again, around dispensaries, grows, what have you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public want to speak? Okay, hearing none, I will bring it back to the council for comments and possible motions. Anybody want to, further comments for staff? First, let's start that. Phil, just one thing I would suggest too, when you're doing the town meetings, we went through this about 7 or 8 years ago with a medical dispensary, and we had almost 40 people speak at a council meeting one night, and we got their addresses, and 3 of them were from Corte Madera. So I would be sure to try and track down where people are, because there are groups that will try to influence the decision, and any decision we make, I want to make sure is influenced by the people that live here, most importantly. That was the only comment I had. Is there?
I've got a couple, if it's okay.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor. Thank you. First of all, I think I'm going to fundamentally agree that we should take more time to discuss this before we take action, and that we're not resolved, we're not ready to take action. So extending the moratorium is entirely appropriate to have that community discussion. And I'm actually looking forward to that community discussion. And talking with a number of neighbors who have come up to me and said, oh, I see you're taking on the issue of medical or non-medical marijuana, and good for you. You know, it's a time we came in alignment with the state law that we all voted for. Oh, really? Okay, well, will you come testify? They're not here. I think one of the things that the town of Fairfax has concluded for their discussions is that they should stop trying to distinguish between medical and non-medical marijuana. Number one, because there are medical dimensions of any use of cannabis, right? There are psychotropic, some large, some small, of any use. And so it's not helpful, and especially if what we're facing really is, are we going to have recreational or adult, let's call it adult dispensary type business? Let's just eliminate the concern about defining the separation between medical and non-medical. Another thing that has occurred to me is that I am very reluctant to go about regulating public behaviors and having a moral approach to public behaviors. And especially when one of my children has pointed out to me that we have an enormous amount of sales of alcohol in this town. And 20% of the food store that we regularly visit is given over to alcohol sales now. And alcohol is a lot more dangerous statistically around our country than cannabis. But it is an emotional issue, and it raises lots of concerns and questions, and it's something that we need to get into and discuss. I would put on the same topic agenda opioid use, partly because in Colorado and in Oregon, as they have gone to more dispensaries, the use of opioids has decreased. And it's a similar package of potential things that could be addressed. So anyway, I apologize for going on a little bit too long. look forward to the conversation, and I'm not in disagreement with the staff recommendation.
Just for the record, I'm in agreement with the staff recommendation as well. We need to get more time on this. Is there, does somebody want to make a motion? I guess we would need two separate motions, right?
Yeah, just
Yes.
as a caution, two separate motions.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 48/218.
Second.
Councilmember Bailey? Councilmember Beckman?
Yes.
Councilmember Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews?
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio?
Yes. And we need a second motion for urgency ordinance number 978.
I'll make that motion.
A second?
Councilmember Bailey? Councilmember Beckman?
Yes.
Councilmember Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews?
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio?
Yes. Okay, thank you, everyone. Moving on to business items. I'm going to turn this over to Todd. I think we're going to be able to at least combine reports on a number of these. Maybe the first 5, 6-1 through 6-5.
Yeah, so, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the
But
council.
we are going to have to vote on each one separately,
Correct.
right? Yes.
That's
okay.
correct. So if you allow me, I'd like to combine items 6.1.1 through 6.1.3. Those are the resos before you to approve the memorandums of understanding between the town of Corte Madera, and the first one is all of our department head employees. The second one are our mid-managers, and the third one is SCIU, our public works employees. Again, this is the second of 2 meetings. We brought these items to you at our last meeting. I provided,
Question.
yes.
The draft resolution, I think we got the same number as the one we just passed. The marijuana resolution, I think, was 4218. It was 48, okay. Okay, thank you, I'm sorry.
So again, the council has, what we did is we combined all of our MOUs into one discussion, but we tried to make it easy to follow for the council and the community of what these MOU agreements mean to the town of Corte Madera, both in the short term and long term. Again, it's this document. You all have it at the dais. For the community members, it's in the back of the room. This has also been placed on our website, and it's been there since the last meeting. And again, in summary, this document, hopefully it's helpful to the council and the community. What we tried to do is really identify what our philosophy was with these negotiations. And you can see a summary of really how we came about that. And we're really trying to strike a balance between staying competitive, to keep our employees competitive, but also a fairness to staff in coping with some of the rising costs in the Bay Area. But most importantly, being fiscally prudent in everything we did. And we landed on a 3-year contract. Again, it's approximately 8% over 3 years. It's a 3%, 2% increase. When you look at that, again, on the first page, below that, our philosophy, it talks about the salary surveys, and really salary surveys are difficult, but we really try to do an apples-to-apples comparison. We looked at 4 counties and agencies in similar size or similar positions of what we asked our employees to do. When you take those salary surveys, really we were right at the median. We're just a little bit below the median. This proposed MOU request for all of our employees, we believe at the end of the 3 years will keep us right around the median, and I think that's where we want to be. Below that, you have a breakdown of really where all of your employees in the different respective groups, where they land in those salary surveys. On page 2, you have an overview of the cost of what these MOUs mean, the breakdown amongst the 4 groups. Tonight, we approved fire at the last meeting. So tonight, it's the department heads, the mid-managers, and SCIU. It gives you a 3-year breakdown of the total cost of what this looks like. Again, below that, we really talked about the impacts of the pension liability. And something that was really important to note, we noted it at the last meeting. Half of our employees are now PEPRA employees, and PEPRA is the 2013 change in the law, and that's really important because that allows us now to start attacking and really kind of getting on the other side of that slope, so to speak, and problem solving long-term debt and liabilities. And then there's a summary of what that pension law did and what that means. And so there's a nice summary paragraph there for the community and the council. Below that, it's important to point out a lot of negotiated pension reform that the town of Corte Madera has done under the leadership of the council over the past few years. And we have a summary of what that is. And in summary, we really go 4.5% to 5.5% more than what the law allows us to do as a jurisdiction. We were able to negotiate that and have our employees pay additional portions of the employer's share of CalPERS cost. What does that mean to us annually? It's approximately $83,000 in savings that we no longer pay as a town. Our employees are sharing in that contribution. The other thing, and again, it's not tonight, but it goes back to that philosophy. The consolidation with Corte Madera Fire and Larkspur Fire forming the Central Marin Fire Authority. And we believe our consolidation will take place in September. So you'll have a JPA coming back to you for ratification then. But it allowed us to do a whole bunch of things. And so it allowed us not only to have our employees pay half of the employer's cost of CalPERS, but it also allowed us to reform from 3% at 50 to 3% at 55. It saves us millions of dollars over the long term. And again, it's important to start to get a handle and a grasp on attacking this. The other thing we did on fire, and we haven't done it with our employees yet, but we reformed employee health one additional step. And so for fire, current new hires for fire pay 20% of their medical cost. So we only pay 80%. And so that was another reform that I believe is coming forward in the next evolution of reforms for us when we come back 3 years from now. I think that's going to be the discussion that we have with all of our employees. The reason why we didn't do it this time with them is because they are so far ahead of the game in the reforms of what we asked them to do. I just didn't think it was fair, it was appropriate to do it at this time. Again, everything we do, it's important recruitment and retention of quality people. We're a small town, we have a heavy infrastructure, we need talented people to work for this town, and I think we have it, and as your town manager, I want to keep them. So that is a summary of really what the impacts of the 3 MOUs are. I'm happy to answer any questions on any given point if the council has any questions. If not, I would ask for approval of the MOUs.
Any questions from the council? So we're 6.1 through 6.3.
I would just like to thank staff for being really partners to the town in helping with these reforms, and I know that there's upsides and downsides to this, but I think the town of Corte Madera, the people really appreciate the cooperation from staff in helping sort of achieve better fiscal responsibility. So, thank you.
Any questions for staff from the council? No? Okay, then I'm going to open up for public comment. Is there any public comment? Okay, hearing none, I will bring it back to council for any further comments or a possible motion.
I'd like to start the motions.
Okay.
I would like to just make the comment that we have dug into this deeply for a couple of meetings now and heard a lot about it, and I have to say that I am very impressed with town manager on this score and with the progress that you've made in your hiring and promotions and the way that you've laid out this in a kind of a level-headed and somewhat conservative manner. And you are, as Councilmember Beckman said, getting a lot of cooperation from staff as a result. And so, congratulations.
Thank you, David. That was very nice. Possible motion, starting with 6.1.1.
Yes, that's draft resolution. I'd like to move draft resolution number 4218.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Bailey? Councilmember Beckman?
Yes.
Councilmember Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews?
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio?
Yes. Okay, moving on to 6.1.2, resolution number 43, 2018. Looking for a motion,
I'd like to ask a question.
please.
Teresa promised to give us a definition of what confidential meant. Have we figured that out yet?
It's in the,
The mid-managers,
fourth
this one.
No,
It's
So-
this item.
So it's 6.1.
That's coming up.
That's coming up. And yes, it's in the staff report added by the town clerk, and if that's not sufficient, we're happy to discuss that
Okay.
further.
Okay, so we'll come back to that at 6.1.4.
Correct.
Which brings us back to 6.1.2. Is there a motion?
I would like to move the approval of Resolution 43-2018, approving memorandum of understanding between the town and mid-management employees.
Second.
Councilmember Bailey? Councilmember Beckman?
Yes.
Councilmember Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews?
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio?
Yes. And now moving on to 6.1.3, possible approval of resolution number 44/2018. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Bailey? Councilmember Beckman?
Yes.
Councilmember Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews?
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio?
Yes. Okay, so now moving on to item 6.1.4, back to staff. Todd?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So again, this is the second meeting that we've discussed this item, and really we're asking two actions for consideration. The first is to approve resolution. Thank you. The first is to approve resolution number, it's nice some things don't change. Resolution number 45-2018, updating the position classification and job description, really adding an administrative analyst in the professional and technical employee salary schedule. Again, we discussed this at the last meeting. If council so chooses to approve this position, then we're asking for a second action. That's resolution number 46-2018, amending the compensation schedule B for this position. Again, as we've worked over the last 20 months with our positions, we've really looked at every department, every position, everything we're trying to do, and really trying to put the right people in the right places and really giving them the title and the description of what we're asking to do of them. And this is the focus of the customer service representatives. We have 3 of them. They've been really successful. We believe 2 of them currently have what we're asking of them, have the skill set, the education, and the experience to be administrative analysts. The definition of administrative analyst, it is outlined in the report, but really it's someone that can go in any department and take a subject matter and analyze it and give us that impressive background and information we need as department heads when we come to council with recommendations. And I'll tell you that both Tracy and Lorena, we talked about them at the last meeting, they've provided us a lot of the analysts that we've enjoyed and your department heads get credit for a lot of times. They're doing the work and they're definitely needed, and it's something, again, on the recruitment retention factor, keeping the right people in the right positions. It's really important. It's been really successful, and so we recommend council consider making an administrative analyst position. And again, important to note, we're not asking for additional full-time employees. It's just a range of, we're going to move 2 customer service reps, if they have the skill set, into this administrative analyst position. They're still going to be working in the areas they are. They're just doing, more high-level work. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions from the council? Jim, is this where your question was?
Well, on previous,
Sure, I'm happy to.
one of the previous things described confidential employees, and I
Right.
never figured out what that was.
That's okay. I did review the council meeting from 2 weeks ago where you all had that discussion. So generally, and Teresa said it well, is different jurisdictions define that differently, but generally how it's been used in Corte Madera and in many jurisdictions is if those people that will be involved with labor negotiations or salary discussions would generally be confidential employees so that they are not as part of the unions which would have bargaining. They would be their separate non-bargaining unit. In many jurisdictions, that would be folks in the city or town attorney's office, and if you had an HR department in-house, it would generally include those folks and anybody in the manager's office that was actually currently involved in labor negotiations. For the most part, Corte Madera does that out of house and with the town manager, and so you generally don't have that classification here of that's why the individuals that you were talking about, the analysts, wouldn't be confidential employees.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to add that after speaking with the town attorney at the previous meeting, we went back and reviewed our intentions for this position and made the decision in this draft to leave that position in the section for professional and technical employees. We had originally suggested they move into the confidential classification, but given that definition was at odds with our intentions for that position, we left it in the professional and technical employees classification, which is also where the customer service representative position is located.
Thank you. Any further questions from the council? Okay, I will open it up to the public for comment on item 6.1.4. Okay, hearing none, we'll come back to the council for further any comments and possible, and we would need two motions, right, again?
Yes.
Because we've got two resolutions here, 45/2018 and 46/2018, am I?
One sentence comment. Presumably, the administrative analysts will not lose their customer service orientation. Even
That's
though-
correct. That's a big part of their job. Everything all of our employees do. Yes.
Good.
Yes.
And I would move the adoption of resolution, is it 44?
45.
45-2018.
Is there a second?
Yes, second.
Councilmember Bailey, Councilmember Beckman,
Yes.
Councilmember Kuhnhart,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews,
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio.
Yes. And moving on to resolution number 46/2018.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to recommend that we adopt Resolution 46-2018.
Second.
Councilmember Bailey, Councilmember Beckman,
Yes.
Councilmember Kuhnhart,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews,
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio.
Yes. And moving on to item 6.1.5, consideration and possible action to approve resolution 47/2018.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We are asking you to approve our updated publicly available pay schedule for all town employees. We're mandated to do that by CalPERS. It's also one of the recommendations of jurisdictions to be transparent and list our pay scales publicly on the website. So now that we've approved and updated our MOUs for all employees and the new classification for the administrative analyst, this salary pay schedule reflects those changes, and we're asking you to approve that, and we'll post this on the website tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions from council for staff? Okay, then we will open it up to the public for comment. Okay, hearing none, I will bring it back to council for comments and a possible motion, and I just wanted to make a comment also. Echoing Councilman Kuhnhart, I just wanted to thank Todd. I've had the good fortune of working with you on this for many years, including our time in the police department, and have just always been impressed by the way you work with and manage employees and staff, and thank you so much. It's really great to have someone who's doing such a good, thorough job on this, so thank you.
Thank you.
Anyway, is there a motion for resolution number 47/2018?
Yeah, I'd like to move to approve resolution 47/2018.
Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Bailey, Councilmember Beckman,
Yes.
Councilmember Kuhnhart,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews,
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio.
Yes. Okay, item 6.1.6, review of Tamil Vista Complete Streets concept. So we have a report from Peter Brown and Jared of Public Works.
Thank you, Mayor Ravazio, members of the council. We wanted to brief council on our progress on the Tamil Vista Complete Streets Improvement Project. This project was reviewed by BPAC at their June meeting, And this is one of the, I would say, larger in scope and town impact projects that the Public Works Department is undertaking at this moment. And just to kind of orient council and anybody who may be watching, the project limits are kind of laid out here. Pfeiffer, the intersection of Pfeiffer and Tamil Vista here at the north end is slated for improvements. You'll know that the MMWD properties here on both sides of Tamil Vista are kind of our highest volume pedestrian crossing. This is that long left turn channelization to get onto Warnham. Of course, the new Tam Ridge development here, the DMV, and then again, as you go, Jared will walk us through both above and below Warnham, the improvements. They're similar, but there are some differences. And then just to kind of talk about some of the rationale for the project, I would say that it's driven by a few things, one of which is safety improvements. This is a map of town that kind of outlines the corridors that we've observed based on 5-year collision record and our likelihood to have future collisions. These are basically the arterials of Corte Madera. They're the highest volume, highest speed roadways. And if you travel these roadways as a person who bikes or walks or drives, you'll know that your chances of running into anything are highest on Corte Madera Avenue, Tamalpais, right out here in front of Town Hall. This is Casa Buena here. Tamil Vista, of course, the subject of this discussion. And then, really San Clemente and Paradise Drive. The darker the color, the more, I would say, high risk the corridor. And so again, we're honing in here on the area between Pfeiffer and Madera. And of course, Warnham's not shown on here. Warnham is not one of our more dangerous corridors. And then before I turn it over to Jared, the only other thing I'll say is that the sanitary district is partnering with this project. It's really important for our public works improvements to look at economy of scale. I believe our main line is in need of repair on Tamil Vista, and so we will implement that project through the sanitary district to do repairs underneath the roadway prior to the grind and overlay and the multimodal improvements that Jared will walk us through, I think, for about the next 5 minutes or so.
All right, thank you, Peter. So here, we're kind of dividing this conversation up south and north of Warnham along Tamil Vista. So looking here at existing conditions, we're going to be improving driveway approaches. On the left, you can see a photo showing an existing driveway approach that does not meet ADA requirements. So that's going to be something that we're going to be improving to get ADA cross slopes up to 2%. And then the existing storm drainage and catch basins along the street gutters is going to get improved as well. Looking at a cross section, you can see above the existing, we have pretty large sidewalks, 6.5 and 5 feet. And the travel lanes, what's not shown in the middle is there's currently a left-hand turn pocket there, but the width of the lanes are going to get reduced down. You can see the improvement on the bottom, 2 10-foot wide travel lanes with a 9-foot turning lane. It's going to reduce speeds and help to make that a safer corridor. We're adding in a 6-foot wide class 2 bike lane on each direction, north and south, and keeping the sidewalks consistent with their existing condition width-wise. And then you can see the residential on the west and the commercial type buildings on the east side of the road. So some constraints and opportunities that we're looking at are improvement of the sidewalk. You can see on the left-hand photo, the sidewalks are in need of repair. So part of this project on the west side of the street is going to be increasing redoing the sidewalks, improving their quality, and reworking the ped crossings, the ADA ramps, and then something of note is to enable the class 2 bike lane in the southbound direction. We're going to be red curbing 8 additional homes along that southernmost section of this project. And just for reference, currently there is no parking about 95% of the length of this corridor under this study, so we're just completing that up. And then jumping to the north of Warnham Drive, basically existing conditions here, 14-foot travel lanes, no current Class 2 bike lanes, 4 and 4.5 foot sidewalks, and a 12-foot turning pocket or turning lane in the middle. We're looking to reduce the lane widths down to 10 feet and a 10-foot turning pocket as well. Introduce 5-foot wide Class 2 bike lanes each direction, and increase the sidewalk on the west up to 5 feet wide. And again, we're showing the non-ADA compliant curb ramps here, so that's going to be an improvement. On the right-hand side, you can see a very lowly used bus pull-out here, 3 buses per day at this particular location, so we're going to have some flexibility with what we want to do there. And then, as Peter pointed out, the MMWD crosswalk currently out there is very highly traveled, so we wanted to focus some improvements on there. We're adding a ped refuge island in the middle with a slight angle to it to increase pedestrian visibility as they're crossing the road. We're going to be improving the sidewalk on both sides of this location. And again, doing updates to ped ramps. This one in particular comes as a result of community requests to increase the accessibility and ease of access of the Central Market Trail for bicycle and pedestrian use. So here we have a left-hand turn pocket proposed for cyclists only, to really make that a little bit more safe and accessible access to the Central Market Trail. And then this is not part of this current project that we're doing, but we are studying the feasibility of a roundabout at Madera and Tamil Vista as the southern gate to this Tamil Vista Complete Streets project. So kind of a concept picture up there, and although this isn't in the budget for the Tamil Vista Complete Streets project, it is something that we've earmarked on the CIP that you guys, all council has seen. So schedule, we're looking at a design phase that we're in right now and try to wrap this up in fall of this year, go to bidding early next year, and construction would be is ideal for summer of next year or the following year, 2020. And then looking at budget, we've in our CIP we've budgeted $555,000 for this current fiscal year. And then for the remaining 4 years of our 5-year outlook, we have the 1.65 earmarked for this project construction. And that is consistent with the probable construction cost of about $2.2 million, which is about half funded by grants. And like I said, this 2.2 million does not include the main line replacement that Peter mentioned for the sanitary district, or the roundabout that was just talked about.
Yeah. Thank you for that concise summary, Jared. The only thing I'll mention for council, and primarily because our planning and building director is in the room, is that there have been a lot of discussions prior to my arrival about the east side of Tamil Vista. So basically between Pfeiffer, or maybe even more precisely between Warrenham and Madera, this part of town is ripe for some type of redevelopment. These parcels all have varying uses, varying levels of potential for higher and better uses. So having had that discussion with our consultant team and the planning and building department, they got me up to speed on some of the discussions. And so what we decided, and I'm sure the council would bless that, is that all of the curb-to-curb right-of-way improvements that we do as part of this project will not infringe upon future improvements to the east side. So we're focusing on becoming ADA compliant to the extent possible on the west side. And then all of our improvements will have a long-term benefit on the east side and still allow future improvements, whether they're through redevelopment or widened sidewalks or future connections, multimodal connections on the east side are certainly possible. So with that, we're happy to take any questions. I know that the mayor will probably remind us this is an action item, but we sure would like any directions or any things to figure out as we continue to go forward.
It's not an action item, right?
Correct.
Right, okay, so let's start with questions from the council. Jim?
Can you show the slide of the sidewalk? I think it's fairly further up. That green strip, where I grew up, we called that the devil strip. If you're reworking the sidewalk, any thought of just doing away with it and just having a full width sidewalk from curb to where the current sidewalk ends?
Yes,
Okay.
that's a good idea. I think, you know,
So all I
as
do is grow weeds.
yeah, as well, it's also a maintenance issue. It's a drainage issue. You know, if two people are passing, certainly if one's in a wheelchair, it's tough on a 4 to 5 foot sidewalk. So I think that's a great point that we'll round back up and look into chances to sacrifice Parkway, especially kind of a narrow strip like that, to sidewalk widening.
So the technical term is parkway, not
Yes.
devil strip?
Devil strip. I like devil strip better.
I know.
Questions? Yes, David?
Go ahead.
Oh, thanks. Well, thank you, Director Brown and Jared, for a great presentation. You mentioned a little used bus turnout, and you said that that gave us more flexibility. What were the thoughts on what to do with that?
So incorporating that as part of the bike lane and having that be an area that cars could, or the vehicles could turn out on. Yeah, so back one slide right there.
Mm-hmm.
Having it accessible by pedestrians at portions. I think part of a driveway approach as well.
Bioswale as well. So we're looking at opportunities to improve drainage. As we change the hardscape, we're up against requirements for increasing drainage and permeable pavement. So those are ripe for those type of treatments.
But it still functions as a bus stop also, right?
Well, the purpose of a bus pull-out or a bus bulb-out is to really take the bus out of the travelway so that you don't delay traffic for long periods of time. In a lot of places where I've worked, we're talking about some places with bus headways every 6 minutes. 3 per day, I wouldn't call that a traffic issue. So the bus would still use this stop, but it would simply just, stop for whatever, 15, 20 seconds
Sure.
and continue. Yeah.
Sweet, thank you.
Question on this very slide. I'm not familiar with that jagged crosswalk. Is this to keep the pedestrian sort of oriented to the oncoming traffic?
Yeah, that's correct. As the pedestrians crossing the road, kind of
Angles
positions
them.
themselves
Yeah.
to be
Is
looking
there
at
anything that we can do to get them not to be looking at their cell phones at that moment? And I assume that this is done elsewhere and that it's perfectly fine with ADA and so forth, as long as the width is right and.
Yeah, I think it's the ADA issue is separate from the angling of the pedestrian, but yes, it would be ADA accessible at the refuge.
Will it have lights?
I don't know. I think it might. That would.
Looks like those are
Yeah, it looks like
beacons.
Yeah. Okay. So there will
Okay.
be lights on each side.
I think those are very effective here.
Yeah, we're this is a rectangular rapid flashing beacon location. I think there may be 1 or 2 others we'll consider on this corridor. We're also looking to quite honestly remove a couple of pedestrian crossings. We like to consolidate those, at the places where they're most needed and desired. But we also have to be cognizant of,
Jaywalkers.
overload and overuse of the beacon. So. Some things that may not be intuitive is the fact that the more the community becomes available and accustomed to them. I was approaching today on Tamalpais and I saw the beacons flashing and I slowed and I looked and there was nobody crossing. The crossing had already taken place. And so what we don't want to do is have them become so ubiquitous that compliance drops. So we'll be selective in our application.
One other quick question. You mentioned, Jared, the additional redlining in front of some houses that have historically had parking. Have those residences been notified? Are they aware and?
They have not been notified yet, but that is coming shortly.
Okay.
Any chance we can help them with more parking space in their front yards, if necessary?
Yeah, we'll certainly look at the existing 12 homes. So it's interesting, actually, there's 12 homes to the north and 1 to the south that do not have parking currently. And then there's 8, I would call them lucky residents, that are the last 8 parking in front of their homes on Tamil Vista. So when it comes to flexibility, I'll work the planning department to do what we can. I'm sure that as this gets further down the line, we will probably hear of some concerns and complaints about the removal of parking in front of those homes. And then that's where we'll give you our safety analysis and talk about the pros and cons of that. In short, we cannot really put contiguous Class 2 bike lanes through the corridor without the parking removal. And it is one of our higher priority safety locations. So certainly we'd be looking to work with the residents on all solutions.
Any other questions from the council? Then I'm going to open this up for public comment. Anybody from the public wish to comment?
Hi, I'm Cindy Winter. I live in Larkspur, and I cycle through the Warnham Tamil Vista intersection often, maybe 6 times a week. And I'm here also for Cheryl Longinati, who's out of town this evening. We both like the left turn lane very much from Tamil Vista going left onto the Sandra Marker Trail. And Cheryl is concerned that when you're turning left, there's traffic that could turn left depending on the light sequence to go south on Tamil Vista. And depending on the trajectory of the bicycle, there could be a collision or maybe not. And she suggested moving back the stop line for the southbound traffic just a little bit. I don't know if that would work or not, but it might be an idea. And we both very much like the median refuge island. It's a safety factor, as many in this room know. You have the pedestrian looking one way and making that decision, goes to the median and looks the other way to complete the crossing. There's only one decision to make. What is the traffic doing each time I cross this segment? And I never met a medium refuge island that I didn't like, and I'm wondering if there could be some more put on the southern section of Tamil Vista. Probably not, or DPW would have considered them. And Cheryl asked that all measures to reduce traffic speeds be taken. And I'm not quite sure what she means, but she has conveyed that to DPW. So thank you very much, and I'm sure that your DPW will do a great job here. I think highly of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Any other comments from the public? Okay, hearing none, I will bring it back to the council, and you're looking for direction from the council, possible comments?
Mr. Mayor, we've
not
taken the
taking
comments
action.
we've gotten so far, and since it's not an action item, we're happy to take any more. But
Okay.
yeah, we've been writing
Can
down.
you show us what's going on with Nellen? Because you showed that at the BPAC meeting, and that's sort of around, that'll complete the,
I don't have any specific slides for Nellen that I can recall. Jared, do you know if there's
Go to the first slide, probably just the overview. would be
Yeah.
best.
basically it was the one where they opened it up and one way south and so on.
Okay, so I believe what Councilmember Andrews is referring to is we recently put in an application for a ATP grant that would add bike facilities to Nellen and improve the existing ones on Warnham. I don't have any schematics for that, but I'm happy to bring that back at a future meeting if council's interested.
Okay.
I just had a couple of comments. First off, thank you. This went through BPAC.
Correct, in June.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
I don't know if you watched from home or not.
No, I don't think I did. Just try not to attend meetings. But I have been walking around town much more lately than I have been. And I gotta say, the pedestrian beacons are great. I'm using them on Tamalpais all the time, and I would encourage us to continue, reviewing them here. I'm amazed at how well they work and how well, people follow them as they come down the road, because I'm using them a lot now. Second thing, I just wanted to comment on one of the changes. You didn't make a lot out of it, but we just did a similar Complete Streets program on Tamalpais a couple years ago. And one of the biggest changes we made that was really subtle and that you're doing here that I'm really glad to see is reducing the lane widths, which really slows down traffic and brings the whole thing under more control. 10 feet, I think, is what you said you're doing the lanes here. So the lanes on the Golden Gate Bridge are 9.75 feet, and that's a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. So it might seem like it's narrow, but it's actually not. But it will have a significant effect, as it has on Tamalpais. It has really slowed down people coming down the hill, and I think it's great what you guys are doing with this. So thank you very, very much. I think it's, from what I can see, it looks like it's a terrific plan. So thank you. Any other?
Just one other, I remember that during discussion of the renovation, potential renovation of the Best Western, that there was a lot of nifty ideas for widening and improving that east side of the southern end of this. And I acknowledge that you said you're not really doing the east side at this point, but is it possible to do a complete streets with just on one side of the road, or is there anything that can be done to widen and improve the standards on the east side at this point in time, or is it just plain premature?
Councilmember Kuhnhart, I think the main issue with that is that we have control over the right-of-way, and we're working fully within the town's right-of-way. Most of the improvements that would be beneficial on the east side require private property owner cooperation or dedication or redevelopment and construction. And so because that's more of a long-term development, I think that what we'd settled on was just focusing on what we control and making sure that anything we do doesn't preclude those future improvements. So, and I think the budget reflects that as well.
Good work, good luck.
Any further comments?
What's the time frame of this, and how does that time frame correspond with what they're threatening to do to Sir Francis Drake?
Ooh.
I don't believe that any work that we do here will be driven by anything that happens on Sir Francis Drake. But the project schedule that Jared reviewed for you is we're looking to complete design in the fall of this year, so that gives us just a few more months. We'd like to put it out to bid, ideally in the spring. And the major impact to this construction project is the Redwood the Redwood High School schedule. So, if we tee things up and they go really smoothly and we can get it done, at least the part between Warnham and Pfeiffer prior to school starting in September of 2019, then we'll do that. If we're not quite ready, we'll defer one more summer.
And we now have grant funding for half of this?
Yeah, we have transportation fund for clean air.
Huge.
We have money from the Transportation Authority of Marin, and we'll come back for specific direction. I know that the Tam Ridge put in a certain amount of money to contribute to street improvements.
$250,000. Right?
250,000, and in my opinion, and this isn't official, this is just a recommendation going forward, that money would be best used to improve this roadway in front of that development.
Thank you. Anything else? Great work. Thank you, Peter. There are no sanitary district business items, so we're going to go to town manager and council reports. Item 7.
Youth Commissioner?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, geez. Oh, I missed that. Thank you. 6.17, yes. Subcommittee. Oh, my gosh. Jim and I are responsible for this. We did an interview
Okay.
beforehand for a new youth commissioner for Parks and Rec. Jim, do you want to tell everybody what our recommendation is?
Yes, we're going to recommend Chambry Weingart is the youth representative on Parks and Rec.
Okay. So that's our report. We did an interview for half an hour before the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So are you moving? Do we need a motion on that? Is that how this?
I would like to move it.
Okay, and I will second it.
Councilmember Bailey, Councilmember Beckman?
Yes.
Councilmember Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews?
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio?
Yes. Okay, and now we will go to town manager and council reports. Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Just a few updates. Again, I just want to, we had a big, I couldn't make it. My daughter had a soccer tournament, but I understand we had an awesome chili cook-off, and I think one of our firefighters won for the second year in a row, so they continue to dominate the chili cook-offs. But I really appreciate, I understand we had 100-plus people there, and it was really successful. I think a lot of council members were there as well, so thank you for attending. I understand it was a good time by all. Working on a number of items. I'm going to have our Public Works Director give you a few updates, but I just wanted to reiterate to the council and the community that we finally resurfaced both of our tennis courts at Town Park and Granada Park, so those are done and ready for the community to enjoy. We had an irrigation problem over at Cove School. A quarter of the grass was dying the last couple months, and so our staff went in there and problem solved it, and the maintenance team was able to correct the problem. And it really dates back to some of the construction that happened back at Cove School, but we were able to fix it when Cove School was built or renovated. But we were able to fix it, and the grass, I'm happy to report, is green again and ready for everyone to enjoy that as well. We've had an ongoing issue for our neighbors in the area of Town Hall. It's been ongoing for over a decade, and it's really been, we love our post office. It's important that they be here and provide a service for us, but it's really become a big problem for our neighbors. We held a kind of a community forum workshop, held dinner for the neighbors. We had about 50 people attend. This was months ago. And really just to share the history and give me a history lesson of what's happened over the years. And Judith was actually able to help us with some of the legal support with the issue. And really what's happened is they've grown, and they've started a service that's expanded over the last decade, and they have early morning deliveries at 3:30 a.m. It's a big problem, and it happens multiple times a week. They actually have a night service on weekends that's going on right now. And so if you think about it, it's not completely zoned a residential area, but they're in a residential area. And so past years, staff has tried to problem solve, and really it hasn't gone anywhere. We've taken an aggressive stance and really tried to engage the post office. And it's been met with silence, actually, which surprises me. I've been in government for 23 years, and I've never had a governmental agency treat a fellow governmental agency quite like I've been treated. The town of Corte Madera has been treated, and I've dealt with all of them. So we reached out to Jared Huffman's office and asked for help, and really just to engage the leadership. And so they've helped us. We've actually are getting them to the table in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to ask for the mayor or a council member to join me in that discussion, as well as representatives from the neighborhood. I'll also share that when I was in negotiations with our Firefighters Association and talking about just issues, what are your issues? One of their top issues was noise, and it was the early morning problems that they have. If you think about it, their sleeping quarters are right there upstairs, and they're affected by it in the early morning hours, and that is completely unacceptable from a public safety standpoint. The other thing that I've noticed over time, due to the large delivery trucks that are being delivered at the post office, they have to go around the back, and they don't have enough parking. What they're doing is they're parking 9 to 12 of their post office vehicles out in our street. So our residents are losing parking. We're losing parking in the park, and so that's unacceptable. So there's a lot of things going on. I just want you to know that we've engaged our residents. I keep them updated. Peter has actually helped me because honestly, I've had an angry tone at times with this. Really, it's frustrating, and I can't imagine how frustrating our residents are. Peter has helped me in a succinct way, send the right message. So I really appreciate that. But nevertheless, we're moving forward. And we're hoping to at least engage their leadership and really get our message across of like, hey, look, we understand this isn't an overnight solution, but we need to do something. We need to do something longer term. If it's to help the post office find another space, we're willing to talk about that. So there's some options. And so I think it's important that at some point after that meeting that we hold a kind of a community discussion and we update the council and really get some direction from you on how you would like to proceed. But I do strongly recommend that we support our neighbors. It's not our whole community, but it's 40 plus of them, and they're impacted. And I think we need to do something about it and help them. And if this was any other city or town, I'm pretty certain that they wouldn't allow this. You know, this is really, it's shocking. And so I haven't said it publicly. I've been careful what my words are, but we need to do something about this, and so it will be coming back to you. The other thing that I wanted to say is your staff is working with a lot of neighborhood issues, whether it's an ADU, it's a project going through the process, it's a quality of life issue. Something that has really jumped out at me, and again, I'm working in the community for 23 years, our neighbors aren't problem solving together. They're not talking to each other. And they're using staff and the council and the town to solve their problems. And that's sad. That's not the way it should be, because everyone loses when that happens. So staff's taking a step back and really trying to, as we engage, some of it has been, we've allowed people to go outside of our process with no ramifications. We've allowed it. And then we were criticized, rightfully so, for that. And over the last 2 years, we've tried to take a stance of at least if we're going to have the right policy, if we agree it's the right rule, then we're going to enforce it. Now, enforcement it's a double-edged sword. And so philosophy comes into play. And so your staff has really been working hard on that philosophy of like, look, we don't have to be black and white, but we have to be consistent, and we have to be thoughtful in what the approach is. We haven't been perfect, and I think some of our complaints that we've gotten as council members, as staff from the community, we're not perfect, but we're working hard at it, and I just want to recognize it publicly to you that we recognize it. It's a moving target, but the bottom line is customer service, and all things being close to equal, we will always swing to the resident, find a way to make it happen, but we have to be consistent. And one of the major issues is, again, our community, our neighbors aren't being neighbors. They're not working together. And so it's really jumped out at me, especially over the last year. And so we're struggling a little bit, but we recognize our role is to help and to problem solve. And so that's what we're doing. And so you're going to have some appeals coming your way. You're going to have some things that may have to come before the council. And I never like for you have to make decisions at the dais when it comes to neighborhood issues, but I think some are headed that way. And I just want to start that public discussion as we go of like, really, what are we trying to do? And I think it's gonna go into some of our ordinances. Like, is this really the philosophy we want to have? And really, how do you want us to enforce that or to move forward? And so I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but I think that is our major issue: quality of life issues, talking to your neighbor, and problem solving as a group. So I'm just really impressed with the staff, though. We meet weekly on all of these types of issues, and we just try to problem solve. And the one has been code enforcement. A lot of comments have been made about code enforcement. Code enforcement's a losing battle. It just is. But the support that the staff can give our code enforcement officers is really important, because that's the philosophy. That's the philosophy. If you're outside the lines, do you have to take a hard stance in that moment, or can you get them into compliance quickly to be consistent? And that's I think, how we want to operate. So we're struggling, we're working on it, but I know all of you have gotten those complaints. And so we hear it loud and clear. We're working hard at it. And I hope we'll see improvement moving forward. And so with that, I just want to turn it over to Peter on a couple projects we're working on.
Thank you, Todd. A couple updates from the Public Works Department. We have been continuing to work on the implementation of the private sewer lateral ordinance. I believe we've also put out some information on workshops. We like to get out and invite the community. And so stay tuned for more details on those. We also had a draft staff report that almost came to you this time, but I think we have some more kinks to work out. So just know that's on your horizon for perhaps the second meeting in September. I know a member of the public was asking about it. So late September, early October.
It's an item on the next meeting in September, I think.
That's a draft, Councilmember Kuhnhart, so we're not 100% sure. It could come to you late September, early October.
Got it.
And then a couple other updates on our shade structures. As many of you know, we've been looking at two, and I think we've completed the town park trellis, and the only thing we're left to do now is to get the vines planted, as well as do a ribbon cutting. And so stay tuned, community, for that, because we're looking forward to inviting everyone, especially the Community Foundation that it was so passionate and including funding about a third of the cost of that project. And then the other project that many of you are aware of is the shade sail structure that is down by the kid playground. And that project has also been stalled primarily because our builder has had a difficult time meeting town standards for construction and structural engineering. And I think Jared's been helping us with both projects with a lot of success. And so we finally got them to look at September, hopefully maybe by the first or second week of September, starting construction. It's a pretty short construction period. As you notice, the town park trellis went up fairly quickly. The shade sail structure will as well go up fairly quickly. So just wanted to give you updates on both of those.
Okay, thank you. Any council member reports?
Well, I'd like to ask a request. If some sort of building or zoning appeal is going to come up to council, please remind people to leave up the story poles, because in the past, we've had issues where it's come up, there've been appeals, and then they had to reinstall their story poles. And so if we're expected to look at it, have them leave up the story poles. And also, if there's any way we could sort of have 2 weekends sort of noticed in advance, so that if we can't make it the weekend before the council meeting, we can do it the weekend, the 7 days earlier. But that's just a request.
Sure, and just on the story poll, we have, staff has developed now a sort of it's a document, a policy document on story polls, how to put them up, how long to keep them up. We distribute that to all of our customers or applicants who are coming and are required to put up story polls. So I think we have a much more formal way and consistent way of addressing story polls, given some issues in the past. So I think going forward, we shouldn't see those issues again. And so just on appeal, sometimes there are time requirements. We try to make sure that we get them scheduled as quickly as possible. Almost always, as soon as we know an appeal is filed, oftentimes that will span the amount of time that you're talking about, and we'll think about ways where we can maybe give a little bit more of an alert that an appeal has been filed when it's been filed, that you will see, if that's helpful.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Council member reports?
I have nothing to report, but could I ask a question about
Sure.
something in Todd's report? I was just curious, is the post office in compliance with the noise ordinance?
They're feds. They don't have to come.
So have to be careful because it's not a publicly agendized meeting, but I'm happy to
Sure. Okay.
offline talk to you.
Understand. Thank you.
Council member reports?
There have been no meetings and will be no meetings in August of the Transportation Authority of Marin or the Safe Routes to School. But I want to just let folks know, and anybody who's watching, that there's going to be really a fabulous meeting on September 15th at the College of Marin, which is organized by a whole collection of nonprofits called the Time to Lead on Climate Coalition. I believe that this has been put in the town chronicles, and it's going to have an extraordinary collection of individuals, including essentially the woman who was the architect of the Paris Accords, Christiana Figueres, our congressman, the head of the state's Department of Environment, Rodriguez, and also Professor Daniel Kamen from Berkeley, who's head of the Renewable and Appropriate Energy Lab there. It's going to be a really fabulous evening, starting with local foods, beers, and wines at College of Marin, starting at 5:30 on Saturday, the 15th of September. It's going to be fun.
Thank you.
If you want to reserve your place, cheap ticket, reserve your place. It's leadonclimate.org.
Thank you. And I just wanted to mention that on Sunday at the community center, I think age-friendly Corte Madera is organizing it, but at 2:30 we're going to be honoring our senior citizens and handing out certificates to, last I heard, I think 14 people who are 90 years of age or older. I unfortunately will not be able to be there. I'm going to be out of town, but Vice Mayor Andrews is going to be there, and we'll be handing out those certificates. But if you can come, I've been to this event many times in the past. It is wonderful. It's just a great time, and if you can be there, I would just suggest you make it. It's terrific.
I plan to be there because I'm almost there.
Well, you'll get to meet those who are there, those who made it. Okay, that is it then on council reports. Review of draft agenda for upcoming town council meeting. Are there any requests for changes or additions to the agenda, item 8.1?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, just really quickly, we will add an update from the goal-setting meeting. Peter reminded me about that, so we'll provide an update to the community on how our goal-setting meeting went. And again, the discussion about the lateral placement financing, it's going to be really contingent on how quickly we can get a community forum and workshop together and really do some analysis for the council at that meeting. If we can't do it in the September meeting, we'll do it at the next available meeting, as Peter said.
Okay.
But we know that's a priority and it's really important.
It is a priority. I got another call today from someone about it, so it's definitely becoming a hotter topic. Okay, so then I guess we're okay with the agenda and we can move on to adjournment. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. We are adjourned.